Aside from just life and motivation apocalypse, I felt the need to review little else other than 2024's Oscar darlings because I thought that movie season was largely ass. My body's been like, you gotta detox, man. Flush all that shit before you let anything else new inside yourself. Okay, so the image is a bit extreme, not least because you have to imagine me pooping or puking celluloid and critical scribblings, but also because I'm being a touch over the top calling the whole movie year ass, because most of it was at least watchable or enjoyable. But my anti-Academy crusade continues since my last review for the Brutalist, which I also found un-Oscarable like today's topic, ANORA. Now, we can get into whether or not the Oscars themselves should even exist in another video, and we should, but right now I present myself for Stan Cult Suicide, bringing the ANORA noise down a notch. But it's not just the Stans. Over the span of a year since its premiere at Cannes 24, Annie nabbed 109 awards from Palme d'Or there, and 5 Oscars eventually, including Best Picture, by the very end of the carnival. And I mean Carne. Side note to self, that I should also ruffle my feathers at some point about this insidious phenomenon of corporately curated stan police. I like Mikey Madison, but I also already have Mother, who doesn't strip. Far as I know anyhow. Today, now the review. Word of warning before I proceed, this review contains spoilers. So I feel like Sean Baker, the director of ANORA, watched Uncut Gems too hard. And probably too hard, given his rampant habit for following hundreds of thirst trap accounts, including genocide cheerleaders, Zionly fans. Fucking gross. But that's all for research. Like the folder of viruses research only I keep on my desktop. I think the Safdies so impressively carved a definitive New York feel with Uncut Gems, without even doing the whole ode to the apple type thing. And that might have set Baker's NY mind racing, since his previous films felt so distinctly of their place. Tangerine felt like how LA might feel at the outskirts of Hollywood. The Florida Project felt like how Florida might feel in the effluent spillover of Disney fortresses. Now, imagine being effectively born and baked New Yorker, and finally doing your alma mater city's movie. It's not a major failing, but ANORA feels sort of self-conscious in the afterglow of Uncut Gems for better bottling that city's pulse. It's like a much milder form of soulless Joker cosplaying Taxi Driver. And on cosplay, ANORA gives me the sense of 54-year-old Baker pulling a sort of a, "How do you do, my fellow kids?" trying to tap the pulse of Gen Z. Record scratch, this isn't your granny's Pretty Woman. Wow! Now, I know that there are a couple of ways you can slice the movie's demographic pie. What the fuck was that sound? You could say it's firstly set in a world of sex work. But this worker happens to be Gen Z, who gets spirited away from the strip club by another younger adolescent. Having the characters conceive of themselves, of life in its particular rhythms and realities of their generation, is probably indispensable. There's no romance in a vacuum. And Baker knows this. The problem is how he conceives of Gen Z actually sort of satisfies eye-rolling, tut-tutting boomer stereotypes of kids these days. The first hour of this movie is a pain in the fucking ass, playing into caricatures of boozed-up, non-stop party sapiens, and they just want money to come easy tropes. It's so fucking boffsomely vapid, like MTV Cribs turned auteur. You know those now mandatory played out, wait, which brownies were these? Happenstance acid trip montages, even in movies of some people I love, like Seth Rogen? That, where you laugh for 12 seconds and then go, okay, he's fucking a Minotaur with a bong. We get it. Move it along, man. An hour. Baker also conflates arguably more sex-progressive younger generations IRL with just being constantly unromantically coarse. Here's to having a lot of money and a hard dick, intones Vanya. And at a time when humans would much prefer to see Prince Charming Luigi Mangione shoot the shit with the billionaire class. This is the first half of ANORA, a relentless, repetitive, Hennessy head injury magic carpet ride of hollow millionaire consumer excess. And to add insult, if I hear that fucking Greatest Day of Our Lives song one more fucking time, I'm going to decapitate the next fuckboy I see with an elbow swipe. Nothing personal. It's so fucking bad. Like you two did a genre pivot and had to force feed it to your phone. ready-made for adult diaper commercials, touting newfound freedom in 24-hour confidence in incontinence. I'm sorry, I hate that bad song so fucking much. Point made. Long story short, this passage of Derp Prince Charming is chubbing the boomer shallows against younger generations. Whereas better writers from, say, The Hate You Give to 8th grade are able to show that, yeah, the kids are human and want a party, but also are capable of a range of insightful reflection, irrespective of eloquence. So, just to be clear, it's not that I hate the kids. I certainly do not. I have a lot of hope for them. What's piss poor in Anora is this demeaning stereotype as exclusively insta-pleasure airheads. And aside, I hear some of you asking, if it's so primed to be boomer triggering, then why would critics and the Academy, both notoriously old as fuck, love it so? Well, that's because I only spoke to the stereotype in the first hour. You can find good reasons in other critics for liking Anora, but my theory for this caricature tolerance that I'm building might be a bit of a reach, but likely operating at some subconscious level. Anora for some is a hoot in the schadenfreude it subjects her to. But what I'm getting at is also its told you so humbling in the punishment of these aforementioned caricatures. A sordid subliminal satisfaction in cruel reality dawning after the party. So there's let's traumatize her with the prospect of rape schadenfreude, and there's a current tut-tutting, you made your bed, more sophisticated schadenfreude. Like I said, second one's possibly narrowly operative as a theory. I don't really buy it myself. But this shit functions, going as far back as the prodigal son. Shoulda listened to dad, knew you'd come running back with your tail between your legs. I'm not a shrink. Go read the positives in great critics elsewhere. I'm just over here tempering hype, again like in my Brutalist review. I want to go back to that insta-pleasure airheads characterization again quick. Why was it so important that above all other qualities, Anora is dumb? Now pump your brakes. Vanya is obviously dumb as gold bricks too. Have you ever met that bullied in high school, reinventing himself in the frat type fuckboy? Abysmally uninteresting social abortion of a person who's probably going to crash your economy one day. On Anora though, I'm asking, how can she not suspect consequences on the horizon? Does this sweeten the aforementioned schadenfreude payoff to latent sicko misogynists watching the dominoes of her downfall stack up? She basically spends half the movie at a Soviet May Day parade for the infinite red flags in every frame. A seasoned sex worker lacking a minimum of wits for Vanya being a brain-damaged child who fucks for himself, then instantly picks up an Xbox controller for himself once he's dismounted her satisfied or not carcass, for whom every interaction is like a distant VR minigame, who unflinchingly is like, yes, let's get married so I can get a green card. And later, callously regards her like she's a glitching NPC in an already checked off side quest. Her relation to sex remains from factory to household. And you could try claiming she's just deluding herself, but they are only faint glimmers of an inner turmoil or denial-laden realizations. I'm not asking to be spoon-fed. Oppenheimer was brilliant, and watching the tightrope of a guy telling himself he's doing the right thing, but thinking otherwise, is center stage to it. Also recent, I think Kieran Culkin's character in A Real Pain tightropes delusion a lot more impressively too. It's useful here too to note that his character is quite opposite on the end of the bright spectrum to a nuclear physicist, but still gets to illuminate Eisenberg's character while stubbornly evading his own obvious penny drops. But you don't have to stray too far from the strip. Both Hustlers and Support the Girls portray people in adult entertainment as flesh, blood, brains, and blunder human beings. Instead, she's written to want a honeymoon at Disneyland after a wedding in Vegas, and is given a scene with no other purpose than conveying her naivety. She tells another stripper she likes her $sign tattoo because at least she's manifesting income. If I recall correctly, before this purposeless morsel of magical thinking, they were discussing star sign tattoos. This non sequitur belief in The Secret doesn't even foreshadow a plot turn later, like say Kevin Garnett's belief in The Gem, or think Amelie's juvenile quirks actually ending up instrumental to her journey. And maybe this intellectual unidimensionalism is unsurprising considering Anora the movie is broadly misogynistic. Annie's chief adversaries are other women. For a start, There's her envious female co-worker who actively tries to sabotage and hurt Annie's efforts at happiness. Note too, the strip club presents no allies or sisterhood, and her interactions with her housemate biological sister are all hostile. Moreover, her strip club boss gets to act all helplessly, "Come on Annie, you're really busting my balls here." And Vanya, however, is given the slip as just childishly impulsive, button-mashing life for number one, whereas her female villains are consciously out to get her directly. And of course, the antagonist is Vanya's mother, not the parental unit. His father gets away with merely quietly coasting through Annie's dressing down, an unperturbed passenger to his wicked witch wife at the wheel. In fact, equally firecracker uppity as Annie. Worse still, he gets to punctuate wife's rhetorical defeat, mirthfully laughing at her, aghast that Igor stood up to her for Annie at the apex of the fracas. Until then, Igor's another male passenger, but ANORA's actual protagonist, who gets to observe and weigh the world. He comes into conflict with his own status quo clockwork and experiences something like an awakening, catalyzed by what we could call his manic pixie nightmare stripper. He is just one of the mobster lackeys, only following orders anxiously, the trope of helplessly bumbling men in a clown show here against uppity kicking and screaming and swearing far smaller women. The apparent joke is this juxtaposition between what only you and the mobsters know against Annie's worst fears. That because the mobsters are established as more harmless than Home Alone villains, ANORA is effectively overreacting to the otherwise sensible fear of rape. Igor even gets to rationalize his restraint of the terrified woman, which, seemingly innocuous or not, still amounts to assault and kidnapping. Or, to others, just a cute comedy of errors in a woman misguidedly fighting for her life. And in the end, it's the same guy who kidnapped and assaulted her who sees her through the second lease on life. And I remember how a similar dynamic grossed many people out in 2006's Best Picture winner, Crash, where Thandiwe Newton's character is eventually rescued by Matt Dillon's white supremacist cop who earlier sexually assaulted her as some kind of corn-ass catharsis. So no movie's perfect, but it's yet another Best Picture winner seriously straining standards. I'm just doing my bit to strip down award season hysteria before we even gloss this phenomenon of the ANORA hordes. A phenomenon which I actually think is more than just this marketing manipulation I was talking about earlier. Needless to say, Madison is excellent, but come to think of it, clamoring fandom might also be a reflex against end-of-life capitalism's artistic spew, desperate for crumbs of mediocrity in the dying empire ooze. Another worthy rabbit hole for another video maybe. And to temper my own Oscar-knocking screed a bit, yes, Madison's an excellent actress. The human tenderness her and Borisov superbly share at the very end, lovely. I also appreciate the sense of mutual class consciousness landing throughout, albeit superficially explored. And Taurus and Garnick absolutely deserve an actual Home Alone reboot, hilarious dudes. Taken as a whole though, none of this gets your foot, shoed or naked, in the door at an actual international Oscars for me. Sorry, I can't make it rain, I've only got a 6. That's gotta get me like 2 twerks, right? In this economy, 1 butt cheek. I'm broke.